when I saw that, my question was, what was the budget like? Did the police department have enough in the way as far as being able to hire more officers? I also took a look at the fact that they hire 1 out of 17 of their applicants that are coming through, which means that they are definitely trying to make sure that they have quality officers. But it seems as though there has to be some other underlying reason. It could be very well that it's a small community and individuals may feel as though they can advance quicker and further if they were going to larger agencies. And so as a result, that's why they may be looking for it. I know that a number of individuals who went to Northern Arizona University, African Americans who came out that were majoring in criminal justice, some other areas, and had worked with NAU Police Department, that they had left. And so I was trying to wrap my mind around what was it that the maybe Flagstaff Police Department needs to do in order to try to bring in not only more officers, but also more African-American civilians as well. I took a look at as far as the arrest record to see exactly where they were. And it appears that there's 2.3% African-Americans in the Flagstaff area. Shoplifting was the highest area whereby individuals were being arrested who were African-American at 6%, disorderly conduct and aggravated assault at 4%, domestic violence at 3%, and all of the offenses were either 2% or lower, which was something that was positive. But for me, especially when you have a background as far as community-based policing, I take a look to see what else is going on in the way of city funds going towards libraries, going towards schools, going towards after-action programs. And here again, I go back with regards to officers, and that is, do we have enough officers for the purposes of not only school resource officers, but also PAL programs, DARE programs, GRADE programs, those programs which will introduce our youth to those to the field of law enforcement in a very positive way. I can tell you, I used to do Anytown programs for years in Prescott, and one of the things that we would always ask the students, and that was, do you know of any good police officers? And because so many of them saw them in such a controversial role, arresting their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, sisters, uncles, and aunts, they said the only ones that I knew that were good officers were school resource officers, DARE officers, and GRADE officers. And so this shouts to law enforcement as far as in order to have that long-standing relationship that we need, that community relationship, whereby not only the accountability that is now being demanded upon law enforcement in the way of body-worn cameras and early warning systems and the like, but in order to establish that, we have to do it at a younger age. The other thing, as far as bringing our community in, I noticed that they have the process as far as being hired. And my question was whether or not there's an opportunity for citizens to sit on the oral boards. Where this comes into play is when you have individuals that are able to say, when they see an officer, I remember when we hired you, and they take a second look and says, oh yeah, here again, relationships are so very important when we're looking at how to police our communities better. Because a lot of times, and while I was up there, I used to hear from Sister Davis. She said, oh yeah, I know that officer. I remember when he was born. I remember his mom and his dad. And I just called him up and I said, hey, can you go and get my son? Or can you go and get help out this individual? And it was a matter of going and talking to individuals as opposed to arresting individuals, which went a long way. But the criminal justice system isn't just police. And this is where a lot of people have to understand. It starts when you make that first phone call. So my question is, even though police officers are going through implicit bias training and the like, how about the civilians that are in the department? Are they also going through it as far as communicating with individuals and making sure that they're on top of the cultural issues, especially the contemporary cultural issues that are going on today? It takes it so far as then from the individual that is receiving the call to the dispatch. Are we sending out the right individuals and the right, and I love to see the critical incident stress teams that are working in order to de-escalate situations involving mental health. I really commend that. But then I also look to ask what is being done as far as making sure that our police officers who go from scene to scene to scene to see things that a lot of us really don't ever want to see, I can tell you right now, burned on the back of my retinas that I will never forget. What is it that we can do in order to help them as far as their emotional state so that they too can keep their families and don't find themselves victims of alcohol abuse in particular, and divorce. I then take a look to see what's going on with our prosecutor's office. What is happening with regards to the representation there? I would love to see the statistics. I'd love to see the statistics with regards to the number of cases that they are filing, and the outcomes of those cases, whether they're pleas or no contest. Just recently, on September the 1st of this year, the National Registry of Exonerations came out with a report called Government Misconduct and Convicting the Innocent. And they were showing that half of the wrongful convictions came about because of government misconduct. And that was both police as well as prosecutors were concerned, forensic scientists as well, as far as the evidence that was being provided. I then would like to take a look to see what is the makeup of our defense counsel? Are we using court-appointed attorneys? Are these individuals too taking the time as far as different trainings? A lot of times when it comes to attorneys, being one myself, I've been a prosecutor, I've been in the police department, and now I'm doing criminal defense as a contracted attorney. I can tell you, we'll say, yes, we're turning to our state bar association or our county bar association for our continuing legal education credits, and we always have to go through ethics, but are we going through those classes that actually are important as far as contemporary issues today? Are we going through issues that deal with the hashtag Me Too? Are we going through issues that are dealing with Black Lives Matter as far as cultural awareness, as far as the communities that we serve, which is so very important? Our judges, what I found when I chaired the Arizona Commission, Minority Commission for the Supreme Court, was that a lot of judges, when we first said it's time for you to go through cultural awareness training, they said, no, it's not. We're judges. We don't need that. It's like, just because you're wearing a black robe doesn't mean that there may be biases within you as well. And luckily, Chief Justice Lackett at the time said, we shall do that at our judicial conference. And we found where there was a whole nother attitude as far as that's concerned. There are books that have been written. I've taught classes for Arizona State University, as well as Northern Arizona, on issues dealing with leadership as well as criminal justice, that show that it's important that judges are also kept up to date as far as the system. It takes us then to the intake and detention. And I'm going through this very fast. I know that I am, but they only gave me 15 minutes as opposed to 15 hours. When I look at the detention system, are we doing the same thing with regards to taking a look at what our representation are? The representation is the training they're going through. I want to see the inmates that are in there. I can tell you 3 weeks in as a county attorney, and I primarily prosecuted street gangs and occult criminal activity when the state was denying we had a gang problem. I wrote the gang statute that we currently have today that's been able to stand all sorts of appellate challenges. But after 3 weeks when I walked in, I saw nothing but African Americans and Latinos on the chain gang. I said, is it really justice or is it just us? And I was the prosecutor, because I just could not understand how the court system could be filled up with so many people of color. It was just beyond me. So it takes, when I take that to the detention, what is being done there? How is it being handled? Are we working on, and I know our system in Arizona is more of dealing with retribution as opposed to rehabilitation, but it takes us back to some other things, and it's almost full circle. We not only talk about the children, what are we doing with regards to housing? So many individuals are out on the streets right now in every community. I don't care where it is. I was in Salinas, California, doing work with DOJ there as well, every community. What are we doing in the way of jobs? What are we doing in the way of after-school programs? What are we doing in the way of trying to help families that are navigating through not only the coronavirus, which is something that we're dealing with right now, but just with life itself and the impact that it's had on us. Flagstaff has taken the lead as far as minimum wage in a lot of ways, which has been very helpful. But how has COVID-19 affected that? I'm throwing a whole lot out here right now, but when you look at the criminal justice system, please remember something. I saw it just the other day. It said, they were talking about law enforcement. No police, no peace. Law enforcement works hand in hand with us as far as trying to make sure that we have safe communities. But it's like I told them, I asked the ministers in Ferguson when I got there, I said, how often have you invited them to your churches, to your events, and taken the time to try to get to know them as well? There is responsibility on both sides. And when you have a badge and a gun, your level of responsibility is so much higher. But there's also responsibility in our communities. And I think that this is what we're trying to do with this town hall. And that is to say, we're reaching out to you as well, saying, get to know us so that you don't fear us and so that we can work together for a safer Flagstaff.
Pastor Richard, there was a major settlement recently in Louisville with the family of Breonna Taylor. And one of the things, aside from giving money to the family, obviously that can't compensate somebody's death. But what the Louisville police force thought to do was, let's make some reforms in how our policing relate to the community. And one of the suggestions was they give incentives if the police force actually has a home in the community. So the hope is that you'll see the person on a daily basis, as you mentioned, and it's not so much a form of policing, but a form of community building. Can you comment a little bit on some of the initiatives across the country that have been used to create, let's say, incentives for police, peace officers, is what I like to say, to be part of the community as rather than an occupying force? What's your thoughts on the success of that approach to incentivize home engagement, et cetera, to make the policemen or policewomen or peace officers part of the community through things like that?
I can tell you that is extremely critical. In Phoenix, we attempted to do something along those lines, especially in our hotspots, as we call them. We had a number of officers that took advantage of that. A lot of the officers were single officers who, they didn't have family, but they wanted to be able to be a part. And what's interesting, a lot of those officers continued to work in areas where community-based policing was at the forefront of the department. I think that that's really good. I think it is very helpful. One of the things I used to always say when I was initially with the Phoenix Police Department and ran into some opposition was, I don't care where the officer comes from initially, they need to go and they need to spend time and learn about that community. And I had some who would say, so you mean to tell me that a white officer needs to go learn about white people? I said, yes, because they may not be the same white people as that officer is. And they're like, I don't understand. Each and every one of us has been raised in a different cultural environment, moral environment. I don't care what color we are. And one person in one house may be raised completely different from the person in the other house. But it's important for us to take that time in order to get to know our different cultures. I'll give you an example, even more so than just living. When I started citizen advisory boards with Phoenix Police Department, we initially reached out to our Native American community. And we made some mistakes. We called for a meeting on Columbus Day. Now, we learned quick. And then we finally sat down and had the meeting. The chief was he was a little concerned because only 3 people showed up. And I said, you don't need everybody to show up. This African-American community, they would all come out. Latino community, they would all come out. You'd have the whole room full. Didn't need that with the Native American community. You just needed a few. And they'll take the word back. Well, one of the things I asked at the time, I said, is it possible that members of the Phoenix Police Department can participate in sweat lodges? Nothing was said. I asked a second time, nothing was said. I asked a third time, and my dearest friend, who's passed away now, Winetta Lone Wolf, she said, do you think you're warrior enough? I said, I'm from the Southside Chicago, bring it on. And she and I became friends. I can tell you, I participated in at least 9 sweat lodges, was responsible for the fire in the last 2 that I did. But I had an opportunity to take members of my community, the police community, and to share it with a department that had never done that before. We participated in Native American Recognition Days. And one of the officers who said to me, he walked up to me, he later became one of the assistant chiefs for Gila River. And he said to me at the time, he said, never breaking a smile or anything. He said, this has never been done by our department. Keep up the good work. And then he kept on walking, We have to reach out. And when I say law enforcement, we have to reach out. The criminal justice system, we have to step out of those roles. We have to to come out in our uniforms. We have to eat the hot dogs and the fried bread and whatever it may be that people are cooking, and let them know we care about you. We want to get to know you. So yes, getting back to living in the community is critical. Why? Because if I go to the same Safeway that you go to, or the Fry's that you go to, and says, well, how's the oranges this week? Well, I wouldn't get them. Not here. Go over to the Costco and get some. It means the world, because Warren came from California. I'm from Chicago. When we first met each other, I mean, both of us grew up in gang-riddled neighborhoods, but we were able to find a peace because we sat down and we found our commonalities. And there are more commonalities that we have than we have differences.